Anybody that's tuning in, welcome. My name is Jonathan Ronzio. I'm the Trainual CMO. Welcome to my home office here in Boston. I'm sure everybody that you've been tuning into today on this BLaaStr event has been coming at you from a home office or maybe a little corner of a co-working spot, maybe a coffee shop. It's a really interesting event here, a really cool opportunity that Aaron set up through the Facebook group, and I'm happy to be a part of it. So I don't think it's in good taste if anybody tunes in to just wait for others to tune in. I'm just going to hit my mark here and start on time. So if you are with me, we're talking about 5 easy ways to get and keep your team aligned. And this whole mountain metaphor is going to make sense in a little bit. But first, I guess it's worth talking about why we're even doing this BLaaStr virtual event. And that's, of course, that SaaStr was canceled. So I don't know how many people in the SaaS Growth Hacks Facebook group was actually going to go to SaaStr. I wasn't going to be there, but we were going to have 4 of our team members going, and they were pretty bummed to miss out. But obviously there's some craziness going on in the world right now, which prompts us to think about a lot of different issues. One being how teams can work, consistently together, keep quality, cohesive, with operations across the globe, no matter where you are dialing in from. Whether for my instance, I am in Boston full time, but the Trainual HQ is in Scottsdale, Arizona. And I'm out there about a week of every month, but for the most part, I'm remote. I'm a remote leader of a team that's in Arizona. And I think that that's going to become more and more of the norm. I think that we see the trend rising of remote work, but there's of course a stigma around remote work that has always existed. And that's this. This is the old perception of remote work. And believe me, back in the day, I kind of lived the digital nomad life, right? So that's like digital nomad and remote work kind of evolved hand in hand as this thing. And if you were if you were gonna pitch that you could go remote and you could work remote, like this was the perception most legacy businesses and business owners had of like what you were doing. Or you just out there traveling and logging in from wherever you are. And so there was maybe not so much trust around this, but the old reality of remote work was actually more like this. I think for anybody that actually they worked it out with their organization and were allowed to kind of tune in remote from wherever they were. This was more how it went, and probably still is. I mean, there's constant distractions. My dogs will maybe bark in the middle of this over the next half hour. People come to the door. Like, there are challenges from working from home, but there are also certain benefits of not being, somebody can't just tap you on the shoulder and pull you out of the deep work that you're doing to ask you a question. So there's a certain focus and productivity that also comes from removing yourself from the traditional office environment. And so I think, obviously what's going on right now in the world with this virus and all these events getting canceled and the grounding of all the air travel and non-essential business travel is it has us basically here. This is kind of the current reality of remote work. And while it's certainly an unfortunate situation and there's a lot of downside of economically and obviously like just family disease, like it's bad. There are things going on, but at the same time, it kind of is a catalyst right now, forcing a traditional workforce to really adopt what the work, or the traditional workplace to really adopt what the workforce has been asking for and trying to prompt for years now. So I think this is, you see it in the media, the news, probably in the SaaS Growth Hacks Facebook group. It's been a lot of threads of this is just the trend, and we're at a tipping point of really forcing adoption of this remote situation. And so that brings to light a necessity to figure out how can you keep your teams aligned? How can you make sure that everybody is doing this, work consistently across the board when they're not necessarily in the same place? So more on that in a moment. First, a little about me, my background. Prior to launching Trainual, for basically the last decade, I had been a adventure athlete and mountaineer, high altitude mountaineer and snowboarder and rock climber and content creator. I've done adventure films for some of the biggest outdoor brands, won some awards, and was kind of just going down that path of like my life was really solely dedicated to like the biggest and raddest adventures that I could go on and the content that I could share through that. And so I come from this history of exploring, some of the world's tallest mountains and leading teams on expeditions across different continents. And so my root foundations as a leader in an organization stem from me learning to be a leader in a wild, extreme environment of leading teams across glaciated terrain and up crazy mountains, 20,000 feet. And so that's where the mountain metaphor is coming into play here. And I'm going to bridge my experience and understanding of how to bring teams together and keep them aligned and keep them productive from the mountain environment to how that plays out in a business standpoint, because it really is the same. So you can see right here, these are the two sides of really my world, and that's the adventure side, and then the business side. And their side of the face, that's my brother, CEO and founder here at Trainual. We go back, I don't know, probably since I was 11, as far as working together and building a video company and tons of different offshoots and side projects and side hustles, and just have a long history of working together. And Trainual is the latest venture in that. And it's been a lot of fun. We started this about 2 years ago, a little over. And I'll get to, if you're not familiar with Trainual, I'll get to what it is. But first, I'm not here to really pitch you anything. I'm not here to get you to sign up for anything. This is just about providing value and sharing a story that I think will resonate as you look to build your teams, to get everybody up to speed on the same page, and make sure that you can run your operations as efficiently and consistently as you have been maybe in one place, but no matter where your workforce is tuning in from. So with that, the first in our 5 easy ways of getting everybody on the same page is to simply establish the objective. Now, from a mountaineering standpoint, this is like simple. It's you're looking at a mountain, you want to get to the summit, right? This is why in probably 90% of the like conferences that you've been to before this season of cancellations, there was probably a mountain or a mountaineer or a climber on some slide at some point. They make an appearance as a stock photo in most sales decks, because this metaphor of climbing a mountain is starkly resonant in a business standpoint. We are trying to get to these goals. We're trying to hit our quarterly objectives. We're trying to hit our annual numbers, and it's very resonant of actually climbing a mountain, of setting that goal and trekking up to the top step by step by step. So the first thing that you need to do with building a team and getting your team aligned on the same page is establish the objective. In a mountain environment, this right here is actually a shot that I took while in a little tiny plane flying out to the Kahiltna Glacier going to climb Denali. So that right there is Denali, formerly known as Mount McKinley. It's just over 20,000 feet up in Alaska. Tallest mountain in North America. That was our very clear objective, but yet the secondary objective was not just climb the mountain, it was return safe. So it's not, you might not have just one definition of success. For us, it was try to get to the top, but get off the mountain safely, stay alive. So what does that mean in your business environment? Like when you are actually building a team, it means setting clear KPIs. That is the measure of success, right? If somebody comes onto your team, whether they are the new hire or they were on another team and now they're part of yours, the single easiest way to ensure that everybody feels like they're part of this team is to give them a clear KPI that everybody owns a number. If you're in social media, it could be social growth. If you're in SEO, it could be organic web traffic. If you're in paid ads, it could be your, keeping a consistent CAC to LTV ratio and acquiring your target number of customers that month or that quarter. But setting those clear KPIs, defining what each individual's mountain is that they have to climb, and each team's mountain that they have to climb. Setting that from the start, by far, easiest way to make sure that everybody is on the same page. Beyond that, establish roles. This stuff might seem like common sense, but so many businesses just don't take the time to do this proactively. And they come in and everybody's doing a little bit of that, and it's not clear where this person's responsibilities end and this person's pick up, and they're just meshed in the mix of it all. But establishing clear roles is a super, super important way to get your team up to speed on the same page and working together. This is a shot here of my rope team on Denali. We're on the lower glacier here, Kahiltna Glacier. We're crossing from, the little gap in those mountains behind where you can see the snow, the slope of the snow start to go a little bit upward to the left. That's where we got dropped off from that plane at base camp. And this is as we start crossing the Kahiltna Glacier, heading out to our Camp 1 objective for the day. I turned around and shot this photo of the 3 other members of my rope team. And I like to think of a rope team often like your tech stack, right? Like in the mountains, your rope is what connects your team. And in a remote environment of, as I'm here in Boston and my team is in Scottsdale, it's Zoom and Facebook and Slack and Trainual that are keeping us connected, right? So I like to I'm all about metaphors and bridges. But here, as far as establishing roles, I want to give you a little story. The first 2 guys that you can see in this picture on this rope team, we have been adventuring together for over 10 years. These are old friends of mine, grew up just basically loving the mountains, the adventures, and kind of our lives went the same way, and we planned giant trips together. And we had been climbing all around the world and backpacking through South and Central America, just living on no money and sleeping in the dirt. And like, we've had these crazy experiences together, and we're such good friends with all of that experience and history that nonverbal communication is like that. When we step onto a mountain together and we rope up and we clip in, we just know what each person is doing. We know everybody, the 3 of us understand our role on that team and how to step right into it without a question. The last guy here, we had been on one mountain with him. He's a good friend of mine in Boston, but we didn't have the same climbing relationship or experience or history, but he had, demonstrated the enthusiasm to be a part of this trip and really wanted to put in the work to be there. And we happened to have an extra, spot on our permit. In my mind, as the leader here, I was thinking, well, 4 people probably safer than 3 on this massive mountain and this like crazy glaciated terrain. So we added Jake to the rope team. Jake, again, did not have the same experience. So when we show up and we just don't even think about like explaining how the system work and how we work together, we just kind of go. We just get there, we land, we pack up, we lock in, we go. Jake doesn't know how much he should overstep any certain boundaries. He doesn't know how much he should question a decision. He doesn't know, what to do and when. And that uncertainty for him boiled up into some pretty massive blowouts and some arguments that we had to have, and some like heart-to-hearts that we had to have in some really wild places on this mountain that we probably shouldn't have stopped to talk. But that's just the danger of not giving somebody a clear, established understanding of their role and where they fit on the team. Is it just leads to guesswork, and then passive aggression builds, right? So that's the mountain side of things. But as far as like how you do that with your team, if you have a current team, this is an amazing thing to do, is just create like this, basically create a responsibility matrix. But all you have to do is start to brainstorm all the things that you do and then all the things that they do. If you're just, working yourself, like early on in the days of Trainual, when basically I was doing everything marketing, I started making this list here and just started writing column by column. What are the different things that I have my hands in, that I'm driving forward, that we need to fill, all of this relates to PR and content. All of this relates to HubSpot and our CRM. And so just actually spending the time to brainstorm, whether yourself or with your team, all of the different things that you do gives you such a good starting point for starting to like put the line in the sand, to draw the lanes, basically to create your swim lanes of what are the things that certain people are going to take on, and what are the things that you still need support for, that you need to create a hiring plan for. But this is the best way to really start to get, everything that's in your head. Everything for me, when we touched on that mountain and what was in my head, that I know this is how we work and what we have to do, that Jake did not know when he came onto the team. How amazing would it have been if I had sat down with him and had already pre-thought through this entire bullet list of like, these are all the things that I do. These are all the things that Ethan does. These are all the things that you do, right? And that's, being proactive and preemptively documenting responsibilities for a role, incredibly important for bringing your team member on and getting them up to speed. So I mentioned, Jake maybe didn't know when to question a decision. So that brings us to our third point here, pre-planning how decisions are actually made. So this is something that, it could be majority rules. It could be the leader makes the decision. It could be a combination of different decision-making frameworks, and there's no right or wrong answer here. But this is something that is important in establishing with a team before you really set out, especially on a mountaineering objective. Like in this instance, that's me and my friend Ryan. We are traveling across the glaciated terrain below the head wall of Denali at 15,000 feet, and heading up to, we had been socked in a storm for a few days and there was some fresh snow. So we were trying to stretch our legs and got out the split boards to go and head up and climb and snowboard a little bit. In this moment though, we had to figure out, like, if we approached a snow bridge, which is basically, when there's a giant crevasse and a little light layer of snow is over that, and by crossing it, the snow can either hold you or it can break and you go into the crevasse and you have to do a rescue. But this is where we had to kind of have these decision points where if we make it to a snow bridge, do we go across? If we are facing, avalanche danger, if we get to that slope and that we wanted to go snowboard and we start to assess the snowpack and assess that the avalanche danger might be a little too high, how do we decide to move forward? Is it a collaborative thing? Am I just going to say like, no, we're going, I'm the leader and I want to snowboard and we're going to go. And this is like just a very simple example of how this can play out. But for the sake of how you do it in your teams, it's incredibly important. Again, this goes back to you can use those KPIs, that definition of success for each individual person. The fact that everybody owns their number, you can use that to guide your decision-making framework. So this is just, it sets up the importance of understanding how you are going to measure individual and team success. And that can allow you, once you get to that moment where you have a decision to make, you think back, well, which decision, A or B, is going to ladder up to getting us to the number we're trying to hit or the objective we're trying to get to, the mountain we're trying to climb. And that can allow you to decide, all right, well, okay, even if the leader decides to do this, I know it's in the best interest of our team KPI. And even though I disagree, I'm going to rally behind that and I'm going to be in support of the team because I know that we're driving towards the same goal. Number 4, create checkpoints. So in a mountain environment, we call these camps. And also getting to camps at a high altitude, you have points where it's called cache and carry. So part of acclimatization to be able to get to these points of altitude is you can't just go from sea level to 14 and feel okay. You can't just go from the, Talkeetna, Alaska to the summit of Denali in a day and feel okay. You have to acclimatize. And so to do that, you have these camps. And you're not just going from one camp to the next. You are oftentimes taking half of your gear from one camp to the next and then going back down to this camp. And then the next day or 2 days later, you're taking the rest of your gear and then you move up to this camp. And those little moments of going to cache your gear, basically you carry a cache and then you leave it there and then you go back, climb high, sleep low. Those efforts, those moments allow you to properly acclimatize to actually get to your goal. And the same thing is true with your team. And in business, you have to establish these checkpoints so that along the way, where are we actually stopping? Where do we need to talk and recoup and acclimatize? Where do we need to maybe take a few steps back to reassess that, hey, we rolled out a feature and we should have A/B tested that, and it's not necessarily doing so well, or maybe it is, but maybe it's a fluke. Like maybe we should actually take a step back and revert this rollout and A/B test this page. And so it's okay to take a step back. It's all part of acclimatization, in my mind, to get from one step to the other, from one camp to the next, to get up the mountain and hit your objective for your business. So that's where it comes into 30, 60, 90-day plans, I think, for building a team. So we actually 2 weeks ago now, brought on 6 new people in 1 week. It was actually on the same day, 6 new hires on the same day. Chris, my brother, filmed an awesome video with our head of people ops, Sasha. You can check it out on Chris's YouTube channel, just talking about how we prepared for the people to come on. But really one crucial element of that was establishing these 30, 60, 90-day plans so that when somebody comes on board, you say like, okay, here are your measurements of success. Here are your KPIs. This is the number you own. These are the first few projects that you're going to kick off on. This is what your first week is going to look like and what you're expected to complete. This is what your first month is going to look like and what you should be in the mix on by then. This is what your first 60 days is going to look like. And this is what your first 90 days are going to look like, and the expectations. And clearly outlining these plans, I think of these 30, 60, 90-day checkpoints like the camps getting up the mountain in this quarter. That gives us these moments to actually stop at each checkpoint and decide, hey, are we where we need to be? Or do we need to take a couple steps back? Or do we need to reassess? This route is not looking safe. And it's a little too dangerous. So maybe we need to switch the plan, even though we established it 60 days ago. Maybe these next 30 days, we need to switch things up and try something new. And that's okay. But having those moments, those checkpoints, so important. So actually the template that I created for bringing on, the team members, you can get it for free. It's like no email, no lead gate or anything. Just go to trainual.com/306090. It's going to forward you to a Google Doc. And that's the template that we use at Trainual for the 30, 60, 90-day outline. And if it can be helpful for you, if it's a good framework for how you want to onboard and get your new hires up to speed, amazing. I think it's a really effective tool for managing and building a team. After that, I think it's really about document everything. It goes right in line with actually proactively taking a moment to really build out that responsibility matrix, to really document all the things that you do that you can then delegate to somebody else. But this has just innately been a part of everything that I've ever done. I've documented, and I'm a documentary filmmaker. It goes back to that. And I think the purpose of that is it's more than just having something to reference, but it's like for these mountain expeditions that I've been on, for the films that I've made, it's photos and videos to look back on, to share, to learn from, to reference, to reminisce. It's crazy to me to think, like when I put my first documentary film out, it's called Between the Peaks. It was wild to me to think like, you know what, if this doesn't do anything, if nobody watches this and it doesn't succeed, that's okay. It was still the adventure of a lifetime. And it's really crazy to think that like maybe 80 years from now, like my grandkids or great grandkids could actually be watching like what their grandfather or great grandfather did when he was 22 years old. Because what kind of insight do we have into our grandparents and our ancestry, more than just looking at like a tree of where we came from, to actually see the experience of what they went through. And so I like to bring that documentor perspective to what we do in building a business. It's why if you follow anything of like the Trainual social media or Trainual YouTube or Chris's channel or mine, you're going to see really candid, authentic, in the moment moments that are not like overly scripted, that are just showing like what we're doing to build this. And I think more than just the photo video side of documenting, I think it comes down to documenting even the bad moments. And like this right here, this picture, we are descending from Denali in the middle of a whiteout. It's like the biggest mountain in North America. And this was my biggest fear going into this thing, is that we were going to get up there and get lost in a whiteout. And it's really hard to have the perspective when things are that scary and that dire, to take a moment and breathe and take out a camera and shoot a picture or, take some video. It's hard to switch your mind into that perspective, but it's the same situation with like when you are a manager needing to have a difficult conversation. Of course, you don't want that to be in a text or in a Slack thread or in an email. You want to have that face to face, but you also need to spend the time to, after the fact, document it, because then that's where you learn from. That's what you can look back on. So, from my perspective, I think that the catalyst of getting your team really up to speed and aligned and being able to effectively become the best leader that you can be comes down to proactively and even reactively documenting everything, so that you have a complete picture of how you got to where you are and how you do what you do. So for us, of course, we do use Trainual. You know, like I said, this is not meant to sell you. I am the CMO at Trainual. This is what we use for doing this. So, so you can document everything, every process, policy, procedure, whatever, all in our system. Or of course you can use, you know, a Google Doc. You can use a free tool. It's an amazing place to start. That's where I started. So I just think the takeaway here is document. So in recap and summary, how do we easily get our teams up to speed, get them on the same page? So we establish the clear objective. What is the mountain that we are going to climb? We get clear on our roles. Who's the leader? Who's, you know, second on the rope team? Who's following up on the rope team? And actually that last person on the rope team is often, I don't know if you've seen the wolf meme going around where they show like the leader of the wolf pack is actually the one that's hanging in the way back. That last person on the team might be one of the most important people. So it's important to like understand everybody's role and what they're doing. Are they the hunter, the leader, the gatherer, the perimeter, etc. Look up that wolf meme if you haven't seen it. It's really interesting. Number 3, pre-plan how decisions are made. So how are your teams going to come to a decision? How are you going to collaborate effectively? And even when you disagree on the route forward, even when you might have differing opinions or different taste, you can effectively and cohesively align on decisions and still rally together because you know you're working towards the same objective and you're okay testing, iterating, and putting trust in your team plan. And then what are your checkpoints? It could be the 30, 60, 90-day plan. It could be your weekly stand-ups. It could be your, you know, every single day you're checking in. Like, what are your team checkpoints to just, you know, ensure that you're on track? And going back to it, document everything that you're doing. I think if you follow Gary Vee, you know his mantra, document, don't create, right? And that's just, it's a perfect way to tell us to get out of your own head, get out of your own way, and just write down what you're doing when you're doing it, or film what you're doing when you're doing it, so that you and anybody else who's interested has something to look back on, to reference, and to build off of. Thank you for your time. I know we're like 3 minutes to go here. I was trying to crush that presentation into a really cohesive, like quick moment. So I really appreciate you tuning in. You can check me out on Instagram, on YouTube. I know those are the 2 channels that are in this presentation here, but I'm on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn, TikTok, whatever, Twitter. You can find me anywhere, Jonathan Ronzio. And of course, check out Trainual if you're interested. Just whether you want to follow along with the content and see what we're doing, or if it's a tool that you might check out and want to use. And lastly, this incredible picture, Mount Foraker. It's right across from Denali. It's the 2nd tallest, I believe, in the Alaska range. And it's just something I like to end on because it's really what we're aspiring for. It's right. It's like, these have always been my favorite moments in the mountains, when the sun starts to rise after you've been climbing like all through the night via headlamp, and it's been dark and you're cold, and then and you're above the clouds and the mountains are peeking out, and the sun starts to come up and light the ground and warm you up. And I think that oftentimes, especially right now with what's going on in the world, it can feel like we're climbing through the darkness and don't know where we're going. And I like to, you know, make sure that we're putting the steps in place and proactively building the plan to get to where we need to be when the sun comes up. And I hope you do as well. And I can't wait to connect with you. Please shoot me an email, jonathan@trainual.com, or follow, connect on social, anywhere. Really appreciate the time here. Thank you so much for tuning in.